What is up, Honey Badger Nation? This is John Kitchens, and welcome to episode 196 of Expert Mentors Live. I am super excited to have the one and only Tammy Pack back on with us. How are you?
Doing great. I'm so happy to be back on.
Yes, it's been a while. I get blown away every time I look at that number. I think you were on in the early days and then kind of in the middle, and then here we are approaching 200. So
crazy.
Great to see you. Great to have you back on.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Your background is just fascinating, and the things that you guys have been able to do. And I haven't had the opportunity to come down there. I drove through your market going to an endurance run almost a year ago, and I was blown away at your market. It's incredible.
Fredericksburg is crazy. We're a town of 10 to 11,000 people. And we get 1.5 million to 1.7 million tourists a year.
Wow.
So we are the primary tourist destination town of Texas, without a doubt. It's hard to find someone in Texas that doesn't know Fredericksburg. If you look at Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, we are what's a weekend trip for Texas, 4 or 5 hours or less for 20 something million people. So we get a ton of traffic.
How long have you been in that market?
26, 27 years, something like that. Moved here in 1996 in January. So whatever that adds up to, I think 26 years.
Oh, wow. Incredible. What took you there besides being just a fascinating spot?
Well, I was practicing law. So I went to the University of Texas Law School, and then I went to Amarillo, moved up there, got a job with a firm. And after 5 years of trial law, I was like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. This is not for me. There were parts of it I loved, but just the practical side I saw, and this is what I think a lot of realtors can really associate with. I saw the people ahead of me, the partners, working more hours than I did. And so I was like, I've never been lazy. I'm, a hard worker, but I thought I was 23 when I graduated law school. I was always in a hurry. So I'd gotten out of high school a year early and college a year early. So I was 2 years younger than I should have been. But I was looking at this going, I want to have kids someday. And how would I ever even pick them up from dance or school or anything? I want to have a little bit more balance, which is, I know how a lot of us end up liking real estate. Not people always say real estate's flexible. I was like, it is so flexible, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
That's how flexible it is.
So you will work a ton and you will work at very inconvenient times, but you do have some control of your schedule. And I think that's what we're all happy about. So I did not go from law into real estate. I went from law into retail because my mom had a little quilt shop on the side of the road that I was like, no, she did not make quilts. She figured out how to import them from China. She was buying them and selling them in her shop. And I'll never forget, I got a prop. I don't even know I have a prop here, but I do. This pink clipboard is what my mom used as her, she had papers on this, and that was basically her financial books. So she went and started flipping through the papers, and she goes, look at this. I make more money than you do, and you're a lawyer. And she goes, and I run up and down the road just buying quilts and reselling them and all of that, if I don't tell my daughter to stop texting me, she won't stop. So I'm just going to say.
It's that whole there's always a better way, right? You just haven't quite seen it yet.
Yes, it was a better way. So she said, you could look into doing this, because I told her I'm not going to stick with law. I'm not going to do this, but I can always go back. So I had my safety net. So it was a great time. My kid's dad, Barry, my ex-husband, and I had just gotten married. And so it was a good time where we didn't own a home yet. We didn't have a lot of obligations, no children yet. So he said, if we're ever going to take a chance, let's take a chance now and try this business out. So I had what used to be a really cool car back in the day. As a lawyer, I had a Mitsubishi 3000 GT, the whale tail, the whole bit, beautiful car. So I sold that. And by selling it, I had enough equity. I had $7,500. And we bought our first load of inventory for our little shop with my car. He had a Ford Taurus. And so that was we became a one-car family. His dad at the time had a little shop on the side of the road in Post, Texas, in the middle of nowhere. But he goes, y'all could start there. He goes, it came free with the car wash I bought. It's just full of junk. And he goes, it's got a stoplight there. The first stoplight between Dallas and Lubbock. He said, so people do stop here and they see it on the way to Lubbock. So he said, okay. So we fixed that up, and we lived in a 1969. It's not an Airstream. It's an Avion. It's a knockoff Airstream. 1969 trailer behind the shop. Did not have a functioning bathroom. So if we need to go to the bathroom during the night, we got up and went to unlock the shop and had to go inside the shop to go to the bathroom. Wow. Point here, you got to be willing. As my uncle, who ended up helping us in the business, meaning he was an importer. He didn't help us. He just started his own business, and we bought things from him. And he was like, starting off, I don't care if it's real estate, retail, whatever, you got to be willing to po' boy it. You got to start off humble and don't think you got to do all the flashy things first, because again, I could have been like, oh, I've got a law degree, I'm too good for this. We lived in a trailer without a bathroom for 3 months to get this thing started, and we worked pretty much around the clock. If at night we'd hang quilts outside because it's a little retail shop, gifts, things like that, and we would put lights on them and leave them on at night. We're like, well, it's just as good to sit in this house as it is that little dinky trailer. So we sat in there, and people would stop by, and sometimes we'd make a sale. And we were really lucky that, as my mom said, in the 90s, you could sell anything. And so we started off really strong the first couple of months. And in Little Post, Texas, I think the first month in November, we grossed $19,000 in a shop on Post, Texas. And in December, we did $35,000, which was insane and very, very, very high profit margins. So I was never going to stay in Post, Texas. The whole goal with our family had been to find a tourist town to have your shop in, because we understand that kind of model, that you bottleneck them and you have people coming in, walking traffic. So people in my family had opened shops in Branson, Hot Springs, all the places like that. They said, well, you're in Texas, what's the best tourist town? And everyone said, well, Fredericksburg is the tourist town. So that's how we ended up in Fredericksburg. And we actually had retail shops for, it was 18 years. At one point we had up to 6 of them. So when I met and married Wes in 2014, got married in 2015, we decided to go into real estate. And we pretty quickly realized that we couldn't do it all. It was like we couldn't keep the retail, which took a lot of time and was becoming less and less profitable, mainly because of these. Yep. Right? Because now you don't really have to do that. We all know you can see a quilt hanging in the shop, look it up by name, order it, and it's free shipping sent to your house by the time you get home, right? And that's just the way the world changes. So we've got to adapt. So over time, we said, we're going to close that down because we have the B&B business, which we had started along the way. We could talk about that. And we wanted to do retail. And I said, that's, at some point, you got to not pull yourself so many directions, right? You got to focus on what you think you got the best shot in. So that's what we did.
No, I love that. And, I know just for you guys tuning in, it's worth going back and listening to previous episodes that Tammy's been on. I don't think we'll dive into that rabbit hole more on the social media side of things. You had an incredible conversation to one of the best rooms that I think might have been ever assembled when we were in Key West. Just that talent in that room alone, not just in the industry of real estate, but we had, a few extremely influential and wealthy, on, the direct selling side of things. And so it was just a fascinating experience. The conversation that you had, the presentation and around social media, and we recreated that somewhat on an Expert Mentors episode. And so definitely for you guys tuning in, go back and watch to help you out on some fundamental foundational, social media things. And I love, the story of how you and Wes, in the trenches working late at night and then repurposing on social media, different angles. And it just, you made it create that it was bigger than what it was. And, I've always had that kind of that takeaway on how important it is to recreate and repurpose, social media.
Especially when you're starting out, like probably half the people, that watch this are going to be in the early part of their career. So that one listing you have, or one buyer client who's buying a listing, you can take so many pieces of that. And the public, you're not being deceptive. You're not saying they're different things, but people don't pay that much attention. They just glance. So they don't realize you're talking about the same house again, because now you're in the backyard. Now you're sweeping up. Now you're changing light bulbs. Now you got a picture of your sign. They just glance. So they just think you got all these things happening. So that is a big takeaway, is especially in the early days, take one thing and make it look like 20.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to. And, it is really, really that important to be able to do that. Let's shift back over, getting into the market, getting in there, meeting Wes, and then going the B&B route and starting down that path, because I think it kind of leads into the topic of the giving tree for today.
Yes, it really does. And so I had my first B&B in 2001. The funny thing is, Fredericksburg was B&B when B&B wasn't cool, right? The old song says. Literally, when Airbnb was invented, we'd been doing it for 20-something years here. So it always had tourists in Fredericksburg, and they had cute little small German Sunday houses and things like that. So they'd been renting them out to tourists for years. Just a cottage in your backyard or a cottage by itself. This is nothing new in Fredericksburg.
Right.
So in 2001, like a lot of people, I didn't have my real estate license yet, but I wanted to own real estate. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Carlton Sheets. He always was like an infomercial guy with no money down, buy real estate with no money down. I remember back in the probably late 90s, I bought that kit and I went all through it, and I was trying to figure out how much real estate, and but I really actually ended up getting a lot out of that. So I would look at property, and if you're in an expensive market, you know what I mean. It's really hard sometimes to buy properties that you can rent to make the payment. Because Fredericksburg, now, in some areas, if it's expensive, the rents have also gotten out of hand, right? But back in normal times in the late 90s, a house might be $150,000, and you couldn't get but $700 or $800, in rent. So I was like, how am I ever going to buy real estate? Then I looked around and saw everybody doing these short-term rentals, or B&Bs, as we called them back in the day, So we had a cottage on the side of our house that was about to fall down. It was a garage. And so we fixed that up to be just a little guest house.
Right.
And then we realized we spent like $85,000 on it. And this again is in 2000. It was a lot of money on a guest house. It was 600 square feet. And I was like, that's way too much money for Granny to come spend one time a year. So we asked our friends, who owned a B&B reservation company, should we rent that? What if we don't like it? She said, you're crazy to let it sit empty. She goes, we can probably get you average $2,000 a month out of that silly thing. It's in 2000. I was like, okay. She goes, if you don't like it, we'll take it off the site. No hard feelings. No big deal. We tried it and we loved it. We realized they didn't look at us. We didn't look at them. We went on the other side of the door. We never saw them. So that kind of started the bug. So then we bought the ones across the street, ones around the corner, ones across town. The most I ever had, I think at one point, was 26 doors. So 26 different couples that didn't know each other could come and all stay in private accommodations. It's kind of how we treat a door. So like one house could be a 6-bedroom house, but it's one house and everyone stays together. That would be one door. If it's a 6-bedroom house where each has a private bath and it's more like a hotel, that's 6 doors.
Got it.
So we had the 26 doors, and we paid a reservation service in town 20% to keep us renting. They did a good job of that. Here's a big takeaway lesson for everything in life. Look for the gaps. Look for the gaps if you're going to start a business. Don't just go make up something.
What do you mean by that? Explain to everybody, what do you mean by that?
Look for the quality gaps. So we started thinking, man, we are really not making much on these at all, kind of breaking even, if that. And we realized that 20% a lot of times was the profit margin. That's all there was, right? And so we had to figure out, can we do this ourselves? So I looked, the service we used was great, folks, but their website, it was a pretty website, but they took photos on, even this is before these came along, right? So they had, just a regular camera, and they would scan a photo in. So they were blurry. They weren't great, not professional. So 2 things: photos, it's going to sound like real estate, professional photos. And number 2, they were still doing what's called a reservation request. You'll still see sometimes on Airbnb, like where the host has to get back with you the next day and let you know if you can really come. I was like, this is nuts. So this is 2007 by this point. So we'd been with them 6 years. 2007, I said, the technology is out there, even for mom and pop size, where you can do an actual reservation at 2 a.m. Print it out, get in your car, start driving to Fredericksburg. That's what people want. They don't want to put in a request. They're going to move on to the next guy that can confirm. And no one in town except hotels would do where you could actually make an actual reservation, not a request to see if it booked on the pencil. They still had note cards and boxes. They were writing stuff. Crazy. I was like, this is 2007. So I saw a gap in the quality there and the experience, a similar gap we saw in real estate later. Later, we looked at the websites of some of the real estate, fine folks, but I'll never forget. There was literally in 2015 when we started real estate, there was a web page where on the front they had a coupon you could print off and clip for $500 off your closing costs. And I was like, what the heck? This is 2015. That's what we're up against in real estate. I was like, another gap.
Another gap.
Gap and quality. Look for the gaps.
Yep.
So we started our own service, and we started it for ourselves. And here's another takeaway for folks. That was hard. It was extremely hard. It was hard on the intellectual side, as far as like getting it done hard. But even for me, worse than that, because I was always a good student, I could figure things out. The harder thing was having to go tell those people that we'd been with for years that we were leaving and taking what was about half of their portfolio.
Share kind of some things maybe that you kind of default back to when you're about to have a tough conversation, because I think a lot of people avoid those and they don't handle them the right way. So like, I know you've had a lot of tough conversations over your career, over your life. Yes. So how do you, like, what are some key takeaways to have a really tough conversation?
You know, one of the main things you just got to do is you just got to do it. I remember, and this was again 2007, and I remember it like it's yesterday, because we've become friends with those folks. So another takeaway I took from what we did to them is I didn't want to ever become so reliant on any homeowner ourselves, because I didn't want to be in this position. So what I did is, again, we had a store. Here's one reason we knew we could do it. I said, you know, it doesn't make sense for us to pay 20% when we have these retail stores on Main Street. We have employees, we have phones, and we have computers. So we literally have the infrastructure. I wasn't going from, you know, working out of the house and doing my own thing to starting a reservation company. We had infrastructure. So finally I had to come to the realization that, you know, I mean, come on, I'm from the South. So, you know, we're nice people. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I didn't want to have to go down there and do this. And I knew it was going to hurt their business and it was going to be devastating to them. Because they had made comments over the years like, oh, if you ever leave us. And of course, at the time I was like, oh, I'm not going anywhere, because I wasn't. But things change. So sometimes your situation changes and you have to have the nerve to do it. And our retail store was 3 blocks down Fredericksburg's busy Main Street from where they were. And my heart was racing, and I just had to go make that walk. And it was the hardest 3 blocks I've ever walked. When I got in there, and maybe I'm bad at it. I don't know, because I tend to rip the Band-Aid right off. Whether I'm letting somebody go, whatever I'm doing. I mean, I get right to the point. I don't do a lot of small talk. So I just walked in. I was like, you know, hey, I got some news y'all aren't going to like, but it's something I just absolutely have to do. And we're going to have to start taking our own reservations. And at that time, I was not going to make a reservation service to compete with them, but we were going to have to take our own bookings. Right. And I told him, I said, but it's going to take a little time, you know, to get started. So just keep booking away, you know, as long as we can keep doing that together. And so they did keep going for a little while. And the main lady who was in that, she just got blew up and just walked out of the room and went, you know, and I mean, I get it. When you hurt people's pocketbook, it's going to happen. But you know what? There's no magic bullet, except that I took the hard walk and I sat there and I took it. Yeah. And I took what I had to take and listened to it, and it broke my heart, but it had to be done.
It did. And I agree with you. I think that's the best way is to get right into it. Had a gentleman that kind of specialized around communication, and he's like, you know, always ask permission first thing, right? Hey, can we have a tough conversation, and then get right to the point. Don't shit sandwich it, because they're gonna think that you're full of shit once you give them the bad news, and then they'll never hear another word you say again. So it's just better to just get right to the point. And you know, because I know a lot of people out there that are, you know, need to have some tough conversations, and that you know, they're just like, what do I do? And I love it. Just do it, and then get right to the point.
Think about all the people who've come to EXP. So many of them had to leave other brokerages. And I said, even if you knew this was a good move for you, there's people, at the very least, there's somebody there that you're going to miss, or that you hate telling. You know, those are hard things. But for me, it's always just get to the bottom of it, get it done. So I did. I went there and I told her, and I said, we're just going to take our own, because that was the truth at the time. Now, here's the other thing that happens, though. So we go out and we create our own website. She also cut off her nose to spite her face, which people do. She said, as soon as you take your first booking, we won't book you anymore. I'm like, okay, because she was more set up. She could have kept filling it in on our site and gotten a lot more money, but you know, so I was like, okay, fine. So we filled ours up pretty quickly, because we made a beautiful new state of the art with professional photography. Here's another thing you need to know. As far as bootstraps and figuring it out, I went to conferences. I studied. I went to the B&B conference. I forget where it was. I flew around to learn everything I could. I'd already been doing that a little bit. And I found the most fabulous photographers. Back then, that was a lot harder to do. You know, the internet was still a lot newer. And I wanted them to, they're called Jumping Rocks, beautiful B&B photographers. We're more used to seeing it now, but back then it was state of the art. And I wanted them to come down, and they said, we would charge you, I think it was $12,000 or $19,000, something like that. They said, and we can't even get to you for a year. They said, we are not a solution for you. Your rooms, when you change out the duvets, if you want new photos, we're not a solution for you. We're a bad idea for you. They said, you need to go buy a Canon DSLR and you need to go to photography school and you need to learn how to do it yourself. So I did. I bought all the equipment.
Advice, right? They could have tried to sell you, yet they told you what you needed to hear.
They said, you're going to have to do it. And I said, oh, and we're going to represent all these different rooms. He goes, we can't fly back down. Our waiting list is a year. We don't work for you. Go learn it yourself. So I did. And over the years, I got better and better at it. Did not ever enjoy it, but I got where I was pretty darn good at it and was so happy the day that I finally was able to bring on an in-house photographer and not have to ever do that again, because that is not fun work. For me, some people, that's their passion, you know, but I don't like that. But so we did. We made a beautiful website. We were state of the art. So here's another tough thing. So when I decided to start this, I said, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm going to have to hire some people to help on the B&B side, but I don't know how to train them. I don't know what to tell them. I've never done this business before. I got to learn this business. So I worked 75 days in a row without a day off to learn the business. I was in there 75 days. And my mom laughed because my daughter Savannah was 10 at the time. And my mom was 80 something. She said, all you got to help you is old women and little kids. We're not much help.
That's all I can afford.
And my daughter, who was 10, did actually learn how to pick up how to answer the phone. And she was a whiz at it, actually. Awesome. People go, how old are you on the phone? Because she was giving all these great descriptions of the room, you know. Yeah. So it was a hit from day one. And I was really lucky to be able to hire my very good friend and fellow dance mom, Tammy Smith, who worked at a hospital. She has a master's in social work, but she hated driving to Kerrville, 30 minutes away. So she goes, well, I could help you start that business. I could do it. And she's the most organized person I knew. So I was like, well, let's see if we could figure this out. So we started figuring out the money she would need to make and how we would do it. That was in 2007. She's still with me today. She said before this, she's never any job more than 2 years, ever. And we still laugh to this day because all she kept saying is, I don't want to get bored. And I would just die laughing. And everyone that knew me was around was die laughing. Going,
really getting bored.
No grass is going to grow under our feet or I'm never going to be bored. So we started it and it was successful. And the way things grow in life, I think so many people, young people especially, you know, my kids, my younger daughter is always like, what am I going to be when I grow up? What am I going to do? I was like, well, you're 24. You're going to figure it out. And whatever you think you're going to do right now, at 50, you won't be doing. So it doesn't matter. Right. Just get on your path and keep going. The path's going to hook and curve. And that's what happened here. We weren't going to take on any more, we should do our rooms. Well, people saw the good quality. They saw our website. They saw that we were booking up like crazy. So they started saying, hey, friends, would you help me put my room on your site? And we thought, I don't know, let me think about it. And my friend Tammy said, she goes, we really should. She goes, because all I'm doing is saying, I'm so sorry, we're full. I'm so sorry, we're full. At that point, I think we were about to open our 26th room. But she goes, they're all booked. Yeah. So you're paying me to sit there and say, I'm so sorry, we're full. So we started adding rooms. And right now, last time I looked a couple of days ago, we have 186 rooms that we represent. 8 of those doors currently are owned by Wes and me. The rest of them, we all represent. So that has grown into a wonderful business. And that business, see, you can't predict all this. 24-year-olds got to quit thinking they're going to figure all that out at 24. How would I have seen any of that practicing law in Amarillo, Texas? Right. You just got to keep moving, right? And keep growing, looking for gaps, looking to do something better than anyone else is doing it. Same thing. We got into real estate 2015. In just under 3 years, by 2018, we were number 1 in the MLS in our market and have stayed there by God's grace ever since. And a lot of hard work. We've stayed there ever since. You look for gaps. You look how to do it better. And then you look for the next thing that you're going to pivot into and keep growing. There's no one-way ticket like in the days when you could go work for someone and retire after 50 years with a gold watch. Those days are gone.
They're gone.
Those days are over, right? And it can be a good thing because don't look at it bad. There's so much opportunity.
Yeah.
So along the way, that business was really what enabled us. I give it a lot of credit to do real estate as well as we did it, as quickly as we did it. Yeah. Because back in the day, we were in coaching and we would get asked, what percentage will you spend on marketing? And I almost facetiously would put in the blank up to all of it. Yeah. Everything. Because I said, Wes and I at the time, we were 47, 48 years old. I said, I don't know much about real estate as far as being in that business, except I know it's cyclical and I know it goes up and down. And I know that we better not be number 49 in our small town when it hits bad. Number 1, 2, and 3 are still selling something.
Oh,
we got to get to number 1, and we got to get there quick, because we're at our age, we don't have 20 years to build some long-term business. We got to be number 1. So we spent a lot. We were able to do it. I do credit the B&B side, which at least you can always make more, but it was putting a roof over the head. It was paying the car payment. So we had groceries. So we could spend more than average on really making a splash in those early months. And we got on people's radar very, very quickly that way.
Yeah. And I think, the just the look, the experience, the professionalism, you were able to just put that right into real estate, because people were they weren't moving that fast. And
no, they weren't. And that's why it's kind of funny now that our name is Absolute Charm Real Estate. And people ask me about that sometime. I'm like, well, because we were going to be brand new, and we were going up against the big box brokerages here, the C21s, Remax, and what have you. And everyone's like, oh, you'll never make it. Big deal. You don't have a German name. You're not from here originally. You're not with a big group. So we said our B&B company was called Absolute Charm. So I said, well, we're going to be brand new, but they've heard the name Absolute Charm. So it won't feel as brand new. It's something we carried over. Funny story is that previous reservation company that helped us, they're the ones that helped me come up with that, because they said, what do you want to call that little tiny cottage that we fixed up? And they said, you know what? It should be high in the alphabet, because our website was so old school. It was only alphabetical. And they said, people tend to book Adobe and all the high. So I said, A-B, absolute something, absolute, I don't know, charm. They're like, yeah. It was probably a 15-second thing, because it was high in the alphabet. And it was for a 600 square foot cottage. Then our entire reservation service became Absolute Charm. Then our real estate became Absolute Charm. And funny story, we at one point went after a really great ranch broker here, and we got him, and he was like, Absolute Charm. It doesn't sound very ranchy, So we had realized in writing on I kept trying to shorthand it, because Absolute Charm Real Estate, that's very long. Yeah. So I started putting just the first letters, and the first letters of Absolute Charm Real Estate, spelled A-C-R-E, acre. So we became Acre Land and Ranch Division for the ranch side, and we took our same AC and made it like a brand. So, you just keep looking for those opportunities to use what you got. So
I love that.
It was a nice little epiphany.
And the thing that, kind of take away just listening to you is that you don't tend to overthink it. You just kind of go, you see a gap. What does your gut tell you? And then you go.
My paralysis by analysis gets on my nerves worse than anything. At some point, you got to make, I remember when we came to EXP, it took a few months longer than it should have, but we had a huge group of 15 agents to convince. We had a lot of things to do. But finally, the thing that helped me the most was I finally said, well, now that I know it exists, I have a risk either way. I either do it, and what's the worst that could happen if we did it and didn't like it, or I can miss out on the opportunity. Which of those two risks can I sleep at night with? Yeah. And I finally decided the downside, if I did it and hated it, was not that big. Scratch the name back off our sign, versus if I missed this opportunity and looking back, I even told someone recently, I said, if you took away revenue share, stock, healthcare plan, some of my favorite things about EXP, I still wouldn't go back to being my own broker. You couldn't pay me to go back. Yeah. So it has just been such a win, but it finally took jumping off the mountain, doing the thing. Nobody on the team really wanted to do it, because why would they want to do it? Right. They didn't want to do it. It was change. People don't like change. And what I find they do is they'll talk to you and they're up on it for a minute, and then they go find the first person that'll tell them they don't need to change. Because that's really confirmation bias. That's just finding out what they already wanted to hear. You don't need to bother about that. Oh, good. I didn't want to bother about that. So they didn't want to do it. So finally, we just had to make the hard call again and say, we're doing it, and you're welcome to come, or if not, no hard feelings. Right. And everybody came with us. But a lot of times you got to have the nerve, and you got to make the hard call.
You've done an incredible, just kind of thinking through how leveraged you are and how much you believe in people, and surrounding yourself with people that like Tammy, she wanted to see a bigger opportunity and align with you. And so share a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people, they don't move fast enough to create the leverage to free them up to, and that causes them where they can't see the gap when they're getting stuck in doing the day-to-day and in the trenches. They're not able to disengage for a second and see where the gaps are. And that slows them down a lot.
So much. My mom used to call that having your head down, your tail up. She's like, you're just so far down into doing something. You aren't even looking around to see what's happening. And my brother owned a convenience store, and she would go in there and she goes, he would just get hyped up, or she goes, he was nervous or whatever. He's got a lot of energy. I'm literally the quiet, shy person in my family compared to him. He's like all over the place. And he was stocking these shelves. She goes, and he was breaking jars of mayonnaise, and he was stocking his convenience store shelves. She goes, Jimmy, you can be replaced for $6 an hour.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And he never did it again.
Yeah.
But he had his head down, his tail up, and was just stalking and sometimes we get caught up in just the day-to-day to not stop and look at our business and make smart choices about what we feel we can afford to outsource to free up the opportunity to help others. For example, I don't know if you know this or not, probably don't, but last October, almost a year ago, we hired a full-time director of growth here, Tracy Cannon, who is fantastic. And we pay her very well, and she deserves to be paid well. This is a 22-year real estate professional. She was number 4 in the whole country recruiting for Century 21 when we hired her. So hired her to help both our EXP expansion family, as far as onboarding, recruiting calls, support them in any way, and also support our team here in the office with retention. And it's just so great to know that they have someone they can reach out to when they're onboarding, if they're confused or if they're down about something. It's been a game changer, but we had to be willing to make that investment, right? So that it's not all just me. And I said, that doesn't ever mean that I'm not going to be there for you. But what if I'm in Egypt and it's the middle of the night and you can't reach me? You've got someone whose primary job it is to love on you, give you support, do anything that she can for you. And that's worked out well. But same thing with Tammy. You got to be willing to get great people, pay them well, and let them do their thing.
Well, you said a key word that I think most people, they don't understand it. It's an investment. When you invest in people, it's not an expense. And that's where most people are tripped up in their mind. Like, oh man, I can't afford this expense. It's like, you can't afford not to. You can't afford not to make that investment if you truly want to live the biggest and best life that you want to live.
And one of the things I guess it's kind of on that topic that we've been investing in our team. And we've spent, like everybody out there in real estate, so much on this program, that program, whatever it is, or this new bell and whistle, lead generation. We were in Tom Ferry coaching for a long time, lovely organization, had a lot of great opportunities there. But I realized, I looked at what we were spending in that way for us, and we've ended up turning that into 2 team trips a year.
Yeah.
And our agents will tell you right now, I'm here for the trips. I'm like, they love being the camaraderie. They love all of that. And it's just investing in them. So we go to Mexico, all expenses paid, all inclusive resort. They can just go crazy, and they don't want to miss that. And I very intentionally have set that retreat now to be in January, because the time that most agents would leave would be end of the year. Well, nobody wants to miss that January 25th retreat in Mexico.
There's the gap.
And so we took them to Natchez, where our second home is, Mississippi, this last few months. Took care of everything, paid for everything. It's all right off. We're going to spend it on something, but that meant more to them. And I told them, I said, I want to do it because I want you to feel, I don't want you to feel, agents on a team are like your family. They really are like your family, and your family can get their nose out of joint if you're gone too much. Right? Your kids will miss you. So when we take our time to go to Natchez, I said, I don't want them to be upset that we're gone. I want them to feel like at least we brought them into it. They're part of that world with us. Yeah. We introduced them to our friends. We had dinner with friends. They got to know the area. And now they're like, y'all are going tomorrow. Oh, tell John and Val hi. So it is that investing in people in a lot of different ways, because they'll say, that's what I'm here for, is the community, feeling like I'm part of something. And it pays off in the long run.
The number one thing that I get from people that do happen to exit a certain organization, even leaving EXP, that's the number one they think they say is that they don't feel connected. They don't feel the collaboration. They don't feel that way, right? So it's that word, it's feel. So how do you make them feel? And obviously our feelings are driven by what we think. So how are you helping their thinking, their beliefs that will drive, their how they feel, and pouring into them, making them feel connected.
And if I'm here, I'm the one doing the Wednesday training as much as I can. And we have a Facebook group for anybody that's in our EXP downline that we, if you want to watch it, they can. But they like to have me here when they can.
Sure.
And I said, but they can't always. So if I'm here, I'm sharing. If I'm not here, I want them to at least have enough good credit in that emotional bank of the last time we took them, we did this. They feel like they're part of it. We're not abandoning them. They're still front of mind with us. We're still as there as we can be. And it's really worked out well, and it's made everyone happy.
So being able to even invest into your team, into your agents, and so like even other people that are out there, I know they do some things. They help them, buy investments. They help them get into properties. So like where are the gaps there to help your team members? Or if you're an agent, you want to find the gap. Like you're like, Tammy, I don't have, the capital to be able to get into a property. Like what are some ways, some opportunities? One, if you're wanting to pour back into your people to help them to where, they don't have the money, you don't want to put a whole bunch of money down for them. Like what are some angles and some ways to get into real estate these days?
Well, we've helped 2 or 3 of our agents. We have a little new subdivision that we represent all the listings in there. And we've given them our portion of the commission on that for them to buy a home in there. So that helped them. So they had their part of the commission, and we took no split on that as well, which has been a big help. Yeah. We also do lots of training on credit, lots of training on taxes, on all of the things that you think people know, and a lot of times they don't. Right? We can't take that for granted. After writing the world's biggest check to the government this year, I said, you know what? 25% of my job now is going to be understanding taxes and finances. I mean, deeply. I'm probably 80 hours in alone to it's the Real Estate CPA podcast. Highly recommend it. And all they talk about is tax implications of real estate. Being a realtor, buying, selling short-term rentals, passive versus active. The more I got it, and your mind's blown the first few episodes. They go so deep. Young guys, they're not even 40 years old, but all they do is this. Matter of fact, my other Zoom call I have today is with them. They have a program where you can pay them like $4,500 and you can send them your last 2 years of tax returns, and they will go through everything and create a whole plan for you and see what your accountant has missed. And then they'll either do your returns or they'll let you keep your accountant, but they're like, here's our plan. Here's where you're not maximizing. And you know what? And if they say you're maximizing all there is, then I'm going to sleep better at night. And knowing, because, we got to pay, but I hate the thought that I'm paying something stupid because I didn't catch it. And so I'm like, if you don't understand every line on your tax return, which I know you don't, not one of you does, because even I start thinking I'm pretty good at taxes. And I look at it again, I'm like, dang, I forgot that. That's wrong. Why have we been doing this? Is wrong. And you'll look at it and go, that's clearly not all my mortgage interest. Something's missing. So when you start, your checks get bigger and bigger and bigger to the IRS, it is literally becoming a huge part. Looking at profit and losses, sitting down monthly with our CPA and saying, we've got to minimize this. So it's always still growing and still learning, and that's never going to stop.
No, it's that lifelong learner, right?
So we're talking to our agents about that, right? I mean, these are the trainings we do. I want them to understand investing terms. I said, because and we can kind of segue now into this investing idea, which is, I said, you're more likely to work with investors if you have investments, right? If you can speak with knowledge, if you can put out in your social media and your ads that you are someone who owns short-term rentals, you own multifamily, whatever it is in your area, duplexes, that you're much more likely to be able to work and speak intelligently. All my agents know how to calculate cap rate, gross revenue multiplier, cash on cash return, all of that, because we sell too much of that here for them not to. I said, you cannot go out with the Absolute Charm name and not know your stuff. You better blow them away with this stuff. So we train. There's a new ordinance in town because regulation in STRs is huge now, as you know, even in Fredericksburg.
That's going to be one of my questions is kind of where's that going and where's the gap?
Bad. It's bad. They enacted a new ordinance, 106 pages, I believe it is, that says no new B&Bs basically in all residential areas. And it's very hard to keep hold of. You can keep them, you can grandfather them, but it is so difficult. We've got a big binder every agent has. It is highlighted, it is tabbed, and we've had 4 training sessions so far, going word by word, highlighting, questioning, understanding, and it's so deep and so difficult. We have to go back once a month, get it back out again and go through it, because that's one of the things I think people, if you, Wes likes to say, bathe with the soap you sell. So to me, that's like, if you can possibly own rental properties, you're going to be a much better seller of rental properties, right? And the same thing, if you can't do that yet, at least be the most educated. You can do that. You can do that for free, pretty much. Know your stuff. Once people talk to you about it and they get it that you know more than anyone else, you've got them for life. And that's a huge, big deal on our team. So what I've told them about this story that I call it the Giving Tree property. So in 10 years ago, 2012, bought a little cottage cabin. It was a log cabin, the kind that were made in Tennessee. They disassembled them, reassembled them on site here for $350,000. That wasn't a steal, but it wasn't a bad deal. It was a fair price for the little cottage, 1,170 square feet, real close to town. Actually, it was beside the house I was buying, and that's why I bought it. Two different owners, 2 different deals, but that's why I bought it. And looked at it, and again, knowing your facts, I looked at it, and the gentleman, little old guy, had it, didn't know what he was doing with it. He was bringing in $600 a month. He didn't know how to rent it well. I knew it would rent for $6,000 a month. I knew that, but by doing the work, right? I'd been in the business. I knew people loved a log cabin. I knew that. So I was like, man, but I mean, I don't have that kind of money to go buy this right now. What am I going to do? So I found you could call him a hard money lender, but I mean, he has like a storefront kind of place. So like he was charging like 7.5 back in the day, which is still cheap. Traditional hard money should be at least 10%, but don't tell him that. So, but I mean, that was a good return for him. So he has investors that he puts you together with, basically. And so 7.5%. But the beauty, here's the thing, you can find these people. He's like, I don't care where you get the 20% down. He goes, I'm just telling you, I'm only going to be on the hook for 80%. I'll always be in first lien position. I don't care what about the other 20. So I go to the owner through their realtor at the time, didn't have my license, and said, I will give you the same deal. 30-year amortization, 5-year balloon. You take 20% down, 7.5% interest rate. You're going to get a nice check for 5 years. And in 5 years, I'll figure it out and pay you out of it. So he's like, well, that's not a bad deal. I'll walk out with 80% of my money at closing. And now I've got some money that I can get some extra. That'll be okay. So he did that. So we did that. And every time I did this, I've done it a few times. By the time the 5th year rolled around and it was time for the hard money to redo it, we had enough equity in it. He took it all in.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. He goes, it's worth way more than that. Look what you've done. So not only did we buy it with zero money down, I needed to fix it up. I needed to buy a hot tub because if you got a STR, you got to have a hot tub. So like, I don't have the money for that either. So we had a big garage sale for all the stuff that was in the house, including like a big buffalo head that was like I got $800 at the garage sale out of it. There was nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't my decorating style, but that same hard money lender bought it for $800, a big buffalo head. But we brought in, and we had some stuff in the store that used merchandise that didn't sell. We threw it out in the yard. We raised $13,000 at that garage sale, which bought all the furniture we wanted, got our hot tub done, everything. So we were out of pocket zero. So the return on investment on this property is insane. And so it made 70,000 was probably the lowest year it ever did. This past year, it did right before I sold it, $109,000 in gross rents. Very popular property, but it's also an R1, which is what they're coming after. It is grandfathered, but I thought, I've got so much equity in this one. There's other things I'd like to do. So this is why I kind of call it the Giving Tree. So for all those years, it was providing us with income, right? And tax deductions, those good losses that you get on your rental income, passive losses. So we had that going forward. COVID hits, and we're like everyone else, like, oh my gosh, we need to come up with some more money to funnel into the business. The world's going to end. Who knew, right? During that time, went and refinanced and took $170,000 cash out of this property that I'd put no money into. Took that out, really shored up the business, made everything great there. So now we go trucking along and we sell it. So we paid $350,000 for it. We sold it for $1,060,000. So that's 3 times what we had paid for it. So then it just gets better. So we sold it to a guy. So we're, even with the 170 we'd taken out, we're still walking out with over $500,000 in cash. And the guy that we sold it to is staying with us. So we're still making 20% on the rentals going forward. It's the profit margin. You see why I call it definitely giving. It just keeps going. So, and I was like, man, people can do this, but you gotta be smart, and you can make yourself smart by studying. Right? You can choose to be smart. Sure. So you got to be smart. You got to think about that Carlton Sheets. He found a way. Listen to Bigger Pockets podcast. I'm on that thing all the time. There are ways to either put together investors. There's lots of ways. If you got smarts and sweat equity, whatever it is, you can find a way to make these properties. Here's one tip that I learned from the Real Estate CPA podcast that I wouldn't have known. I would have thought, well, I've either got to, I'm going to have a big gain here. So what am I going to do? I'm either going to 1031 it into another, which is normally the great thing to do, right? Kick the can down the road. You don't have to pay tax, roll it into something else. But if you ever sold something, you just wanted to use the money.
Yes.
That's something else you didn't want right now, another investment property. I didn't want another one right now. I have other projects going for our personal homes. I mean, we're kind of doing our dream house right now. And I was like, I really want it for me. I want to use it for what I want. And I don't, so I'm just going to have to pay taxes on it, right? Capital gains tax. I was like, well, it won't be that bad. It'll take away 100,000 of it, but it'll be okay. I'm listening to the Real Estate CPA podcast when everybody else is just jamming out to the radio. I'm listening to this podcast and they're teaching me things that I don't know still at 55. I'd never heard of this. So there's something called a cost segregation study that you can do. And they come in, I've got the papers over here. We're getting ready to do it. And what they will do is they will let you bonus depreciate part of a property up front. So not to get too complicated, in 2021, we bought 2 properties, 2 more B&B investments. Again, I'm good for a while on that. And I'll tell you, one of them we bought was $1,025,000. It was 3 units, and the entire down payment came from selling EXP stock. So I used that to buy $1,025,000. So I'm so happy about that.
Yes.
So, but you take a property like that, and what they tell you is, if it's a short-term rental, it's considered 39 years. It's treated commercially for depreciation. So whatever you paid for it minus the land divided by 39 years, they're going to let you take that off your taxes each year, right? So, well, it's in a passive bucket, but we won't go down that path right now. But so I'm like, well, that's great, but that's not that much, right? Divided by 39. They said, but even the government realizes, furniture was included in that. That's not going to last 39 years. Appliances are included in that. HVAC's included in that. A lot of things that don't last 39 years. So you have to pay a company to come in this is all they do is cost segregation. They come in and they break down what goes on a 15-year or less schedule. And they break it all out for you. And they said, usually comes out to be about 30%. So roughly close to 300,000, 250 to 300,000 on that one property, they can say belongs on a shorter scale. The 15-year or less depreciation, but 2022 is the last year that the federal government is giving us 100% bonus depreciation in year 1.
Oh, wow.
So we are going to get a $250,000, $300,000 loss from that property that we didn't sell. It's just sitting there this year. Next year it goes to 80%. So it's still good. Then 60, they're phasing it out. So then we bought that second one for $600,000. So we're going to do the same thing there. And then you've got a form 8852 in your taxes. If you have investment properties, go look at it. That tells you the losses you're carrying forward because you can't take them over here on your active income. So you're just carrying them forward. You're like, well, what good do they do? Tell you what good they do. When you sell a Giving Tree property like Buckhorn and have all this gain, you start chipping out. So I have 162,000 of losses carried forward. Now we're going to do cost segregation and bonus depreciation on 2 properties. And I'm going to owe virtually 0 taxes on all that money. Took it out. I can spend it on the Natchez house. I can spend it on our dream home here. And that's more what we wanted to do. So the bottom line of this is this property's helped us in so many ways over the years, but it didn't just fall in our lap. I had to get creative. I had to get my pencil out, and I never quit learning because I would have paid $100,000 in taxes had I not been listening to podcasts that were educating me on new options. So then I go teach my team. And I said, you don't have to know everything, refer them to their CPA, but throw out terms like, have you considered doing a cost segregation study if you have other properties that you could use with bonus depreciation? I said, they ain't never going to look at you like another regular realtor ever again,
Never. No, I think that's it, right? It's you learn, you apply it, and then you teach it. And, when you're able to do that, you internalize it and it's so powerful. Tammy, you are amazing. I can't thank you enough for jumping in and adding a ton of value, being a true expert mentor, what these episodes are all about. And I know we will do it again for sure in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it as always.
Awesome. See ya.